And then Julia, could you skip ahead to the roll call slide and let's just go through it and see who all's here.
All right. Hello, my name's Julia McMahon. I'm the new Lower Hill project manager for the URA. It's lovely to meet all of you. I'm going to do a quick roll call. Is the representative from District 6 present? Is the representative from the Hill CDC present?
Present, Member Lyons.
Is the representative of the Hill District Federal Credit Union present?
President Richard Witherspoon.
Is the representative of the Hill District Consensus Group present?
President Arby Bankston.
Is the representative of Wesley Center AME Zion Church present? Is the representative of the Shenley Heights Community Development Program present?
Alicia George, Executive Director.
Is the representative of the Historic Hill Institute present? Is the representative of the Office of the State Representative Jake Wheatley present? Is the representative of the Office of the County Executive Fitzgerald present?
Present.
Is the office or the representative of the Office of the Mayor present? Is the representative of the Pittsburgh Public School District present? Is the representative of Allegheny County Council present? Okay, that concludes roll call. Marimba, how would you like to proceed?
Oh, 1 second, I'm sorry. Kim Ellis, I'm from the Historic Hill Institute, and I'm present.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you very much for that roll call. Why don't we proceed with just a few preliminary items? Perhaps Councilman Lavelle will be able to join us, but in the interest of time, we can begin to move forward. I believe all of the members have received the minutes from the last meeting. I will entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I have a motion to not approve the minutes because they're not accurate.
Okay, corrections. Mr. Bankston, would you like to offer corrections so that we can make those corrections and get them back out to the members?
Okay, it says here that hold on. First of all, it says that the Lower Hill LERTA district was due to advocacy of the Hill CDC. In the CSIP on page 23, the TIF is there. The LERTA replaced the TIF. The second one stated, Mr. Lavelle stated that the Greater
What
Hill
page are you on?
Fund guidelines created the advisory board. That's incorrect. The advisory board was created by the CSIP on page 23. There's another one in here that says that where I asked for the presentation from last meeting, I never got it. And from what I can see, we have 2 vacancies and not 1. Because on the attachment or exhibit A, you have 10 members listed with the Hill, what do they call it?
Excuse me, I'm sorry, we're getting some feedback on, from a couple of different members. If you can all mute, if you're not speaking, thank you.
That's not my feedback.
All right, please continue, Arby.
Okay, so the last one is, from my count and looking at the growth fund, there was 11 members listed, and appendix, or whatever you call it, A, exhibit A, the Hill House is not listed. And that's a vacancy. So we have 2 vacancies, not 1.
Okay, noted, Arby. We will take those recommendations under advisement for revisions to the minutes where appropriate, and get feedback whether or not. I will follow up with URA staff to make sure that that presentation gets sent to you from the last meeting. If I'm understanding, that of course is set aside from the minutes. Are there any other questions or comments about the minutes?
Oh, was somebody else speaking?
Nope, you can go ahead.
So
Yeah.
what I
So
don't understand,
Go ahead, Kim.
what I don't understand is, are you intending to proceed and approve them without the corrections being entered first?
We will approve, assuming those corrections. If it's the pleasure of the board, we're happy to approve the minutes at the next meeting. You can express your desire via email. We're happy to take that under advisement. Kim?
okay, yeah, Arby, are you finished?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I don't know what which part this is in, but I raised concern about the length, sorry, the length of time for service in the past, and I'm just bringing it up again because I shouldn't be listed for 1 year, and that's obviously a conversation I need to have. But I know that it was arbitrarily assigned, and I don't want to make a big deal of it here, or maybe I should. I'm not sure, but I just need to have a conversation with the co-chairs, and we need to have a conversation with the group. And so that's what I'm raising my concern about.
Okay, is that reflected in the minutes or is that a set aside issue?
Yeah, I thought that it was reflected in the minutes because I asked
Okay.
about.
Okay, I did not see that in the minutes, but I could go back and review them. If it is in the minutes specifically, if you could notate where it is specifically in the minutes so that we can address that. We're
If
happy
it's
to do
not,
so.
so if it's not in the minutes, it should be in the minutes. So that would
Okay.
be a very clear oversight. That's a major issue.
Okay, just notate where it is in the minutes and get that over to us. And if it's not in the minutes, notate that that is the correction you'd like to see. Are there any other questions or comments about the minutes? Okay.
Sorry, one
Go ahead,
second.
Hannah.
Thank you. Jen, were you able to get clarity on Arby's comments? I was having trouble hearing the edits that he mentioned. I only caught the last one.
They are
Heard some of
recorded.
them,
They are
but-
recorded, Hannah.
Right,
Yeah.
but I can't hear them on my end.
Yeah, some of it was muffled, but I think the conclusion was that Arby was going to send it in an email as well with specifically what he was asking for. So we should have that written record as well.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's move forward. And we will come back and approve the minutes at the next meeting or in between meetings via email. Can we move to the next agenda item, please?
Would we call for approval of the minutes with all the necessary corrections? Isn't that the standard way to do it?
That's what we're going to do between now and approval. We're actually not approving until we get those revisions.
Okay.
So I have a question.
Can we move to the next agenda item, RB? Go ahead, you can move forward with your question. To URA staff, please move to the next agenda item.
This is actually a separate agenda item, Marimba.
Thank you. So one of the items that we agreed on at the last meeting, as you know, was to record the meetings of the advisory committee. And there is a question as to when we would actually like to publish those meetings. And also, I think the idea was to publish them on the URA's website, and of course, those can be shared however the committee deems appropriate. So the question is, when would we like to publish those meetings? If there is input on that specifically, would certainly like to get the input of the advisory committee.
No, I mean,
Welcome, Reverend Grayson.
thank you. Sorry, I'm late. I was finishing the meeting. Thank you.
Understood. We were just covering the topic of when to publish the recordings of the meeting. And also this meeting is being recorded, just so that you are aware. If URA staff could just kind of brief us on, generally speaking, your publishing schedule for other committees, we'd be happy to take that input and move accordingly.
I'm not sure what our current practice is on this. I think what the question we were getting at was, did you want us to wait to publish the recordings until after the meeting minutes are brought to this board and reviewed? Or do you want us to publish the meeting and then wait to get the meeting minutes approved at the subsequent meeting?
I would prefer that the meeting minutes be approved before we put a permanent document out there to the public, or permanent activity that we're doing on the public. We want to be all be on the same page as to how we're going forward, I think. And the minutes proves that.
To clarify, we're saying the recordings of the meetings, when those will be uploaded to the URA website, just for clarity.
I believe that recording should be uploaded immediately thereafter. It's a recording. It can't be changed.
I agree.
Are there any other recommendations, questions, or concerns about immediate publication sometime within 24 hours after recording? Are there any concerns for the URA staff of that publishing schedule?
I would prefer if we could make the deadline just as soon as practicable, and as opposed to 24 hours, but clearly defer to the board.
I need clarification. What and how difficult is it to post the recording?
I have not had to do that yet, and I don't think Julia or Jen have either. So this will be a learning experience for URA staff, I think. So I'm not sure yet.
So would it be fair to say that it shouldn't take more than a few hours between the 2 or 3 of you?
Why don't we, I have had a chance to publish meeting recordings before, and obviously there are some technical requirements to getting a website updated, to publishing it. So why don't we give staff 48 hours to publish meeting minutes or meetings of the advisory board. If there are no strong objections to that, I'd like to go on ahead and vote on that item.
Well, I would say for this first meeting, given that they've not done it before, give them 48 hours for this meeting, but in the future, it should be 24 hours.
I second that.
Would you like to present that as a motion, Kimberly?
Sure, I motion that the URA publish this first set of meetings within 48 hours because they've never done it before. but for subsequent meetings, they publish within 24 hours.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Question,
Aye.
Aye.
A
question.
question on the table from Reverend Grayson.
Yeah, just for clarity with the holiday, I don't know if we want to say 48 hours for this one. Do we want to at least give them, today is, I mean, most people are off Thursday, Friday, maybe even Wednesday. Do you want to say by Monday for this particular one?
I would be open to that. Whatever they feel, you know,
Yeah.
they can
Yeah,
do.
holiday, yeah, I want to jam them up, even
But
go.
this is a city entity. I mean, the city has its own IT person. They can get assistance. You know what I mean? It might be.
Well, I'm just saying today, Tuesday, most people are off tomorrow. Usually say 48 hours. If it was a normal week, I would say fine. I'm just conscious of the Thanksgiving holiday penny. You know, that's all I'm saying. For this particular time, I would hope we would yield at least for this meeting for Monday.
That's true.
You want to revise your motion, Kimberly?
I
oh,
have a question on the motion.
Question.
Just so if somebody could explain to me, give me clarity on what's the hurry? Why does it have to be 24, 48 hours? Why does it have to be done so quickly?
I would offer that the community should know there's no reason to delay it. It's a recording, it can't be changed.
Yeah, I mean, if it's, okay, I just don't understand why. I mean, 24 hours and 48 hours, that's really quick. And if it was 72 hours or even 3 or 4 business days, it's still appropriate, timing. But I just wanted to know why it was a big rush on it.
It's for transparency. If right now we don't seem to have any like controversial topics, but in the future, if and when there is, you will want the information quickly, or you'll want to refer people to the information quickly. And like RB said, you can't change it, so it doesn't matter.
Kimberly, would you like to change your motion?
Yeah, so I'll revise my motion to include Reverend Grace's suggestion that for this first recording, that it's up by Tuesday. I mean, it is the holiday, so that it's up by Tuesday, but for subsequent meetings, that it'll be up within 24 hours.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Is anyone abstaining?
Abstain.
Okay. Motion passes. So going over old business, you all know that we did talk about the meeting minutes being approved by the board, and of course the actual recordings, and we just moved through that item pretty speedily. Let me get to the next item here. As a point of clarification, we are going to be publishing the minutes after they are approved by the board. Just want to make sure everybody is on the same page there, not prior to the approval of the minutes. Okay.
Agreed.
All right. Let's move forward to setting the meeting schedule. So the guidelines require that the advisory board meet at least quarterly or more frequently when it is deemed appropriate. At our previous meeting, a motion was put forth by myself to meet every 2 to 3 weeks, starting the week of November 8th. Since URA staff members, I asked URA staff members to develop a schedule for the next 3 months for meetings every 3 weeks, with the understanding that quarterly meetings will be the board's minimum meeting schedule. This was based on the conversation that we had where board members thought that it was important to, as quickly as possible, release the application and that a quarterly meeting would not suffice for our immediate needs. And so the schedule that the URA staff has come back with is the week of December 14th, the week of January 4th, the week of January 25th, and the week of February 15th. I'd like to entertain a motion to set the meeting schedule accordingly.
So moved.
Can I get a second, please?
I don't mind second, but I have a question. So
Okay,
just for
second
clarity,
and question.
is the day of the week is what's important to me because I have some conflict time. So I just want to make sure that are the days are going to be sporadic or set the day of the week. That's important.
Thank you. According to this schedule, we do have flexibility on the actual day. And of course, we will take into consideration the availability of all board members and go with the day that is available to most members of the committee.
Okay. All right.
Looks like these dates are all Tuesdays.
It's week of those dates.
No, they weren't dates.
Oh, the week of, okay.
Yeah. That's what I was
Can
asking.
can we agree on a specific day of the week so that we have consistency and everybody can plan?
I'm willing to entertain for the purposes of expedience for URA staff if there is a preferential day, but short of anything further than that and going into actual picking days of each one of those weeks, I'd like to use our time to move through the rest of the agenda. So are there blackout days that anyone has? Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays don't work for you, or Monday through Thursday don't work for you, or Wednesday through Friday don't work for you? If you could disclose now, we can take that under advisement.
Thursday's fine.
Okay. Thursday, does anyone object to Thursday as a general target date?
And the time of day would be at this time, like noon time?
We have not picked the time yet, Richard. I'm open to a noon start time. Obviously, I'd like to take into consideration the availability of co-chairman Lavelle, but Thursday at noon, are there any objections to that as a general target?
Yes,
Yes.
I object to noon.
Yeah.
Let me hear from Kimberly and then we'll go to URB.
Okay?
Yeah, I just do noon. So I would say 1 or 1:30, something like that.
So Thursday at 1.
Yeah.
Kimberly? Yes. Kim, Thursday
Yeah.
at 1. Okay.
Yeah.
RB?
Yeah, I was saying at the earliest.
Okay. RB?
Yeah, I would prefer 3 or 4. Just have things that are happening in the afternoon. This is really difficult time.
How about we settle at 2?
Okay, in the spirit of compromise too.
All right, Thursdays at 2 will be our target date. I will ask URA staff to move forward upon confirmation that that time is not hard stop for co-chairman Lavelle, or excuse me, a blackout time for co-chairman Lavelle. We'll get back to you on email on that. Okay, thank you. Move to the next agenda item. Alrighty, we are moving to appoint an organization to fill Urban Innovation 21's vacancy. As you all know, Urban Innovation 21 is no longer a functioning organization. They did merge with another organization, and this left a vacant seat for us to appoint. So pursuant to guidelines, we need to appoint a member organization to the advisory board to fill that vacancy. I'd like this board to keep in mind that Urban Innovation 21's role on the Growth Fund was as a business organization when the committees were originally formed. This was something that was thought about, that we are, responding to a broad swath of the community to the greatest extent possible. This seat is to be filled by a vote of the other 9 member boards listed in Exhibit A of the guidelines as shown on the screen. If you move forward to the next slide. Okay. Preference shall be given to residents of the Greater Hill District consistent with Section 4 of the CSIP. Today, one organization, Bethel AME, reached out to the URA, specifically to Councilman Lavelle, requesting that the seat be filled by Bethel AME. Are there any additional nominations? Each board member is allowed to nominate one entity. And I'd like to know if any nominations were received via email from URA staff. I have not received any as co-chair.
I'd like to nominate Ujima Collective.
I previously nominated Bethel.
Okay. Ujima Collective and Bethel. Any other nominations?
My understanding was that we were focused on filling this spot with a business entity, like an actual business entity. So I'm kind of confused about.
If I may, there's nothing written in regards to what the entity should be in regards to their focus. The growth fund and the reinvestment fund were supposed to be people focused. And the one thing that I will say is the redevelopment of the Hill requires business, but it also requires residents because Black business cannot sustain itself without Black residents. So those things should be paramount in understanding that we want to focus on people and sustainability. Business will come.
Okay.
Do you have a nomination, Kimberly?
Yeah, I'd like to nominate the August Wilson House.
Okay. Are there any additional nominations?
I move that we close on those 3 entities.
So move. We are now going to vote on the entities that have been nominated. For the purposes of recording this properly, I'd like to ask that everyone participate both by either verbal or show of hand if your camera is not on, and also by putting your vote in chat.
So I have a
Point of clarity. Yes, Arby.
It says here that the vote is to be filled by the other 9 members listed, and all 9 members are not listed, are not present. So I don't think we should be proceeding forward with a vote.
Give me 1 second here. I need to get some clarification in this particular case, and this may be a question for Hannah. We do have quorum to vote, so I'm not concerned about actually voting. My question is, because we can always vote via email, of course, as well. My question is more or less, in this particular case, are the ex officio members voting? Because those are non-voting members. Hannah, can you clarify that from a legal standpoint? My expectation would be that the ex officios are not.
Yes, I believe, actually, give me 1 second, Marimba. I'd like to double check.
Okay, no problem.
So what precedent establishes it? I'm really confused.
What's your question, RB?
Well, I'm trying to understand. So in Robert's Rules of Order, the chair is not supposed to vote. So I'm trying to understand how that's going to work and why all 9 members that are listed here, because the way the procedure is written and the way the CSIP is written, there's conflicts. I think those conflicts need to be resolved before we vote.
RB, can you be more specific? And by the way, we did state at the last meeting that we are loosely following Robert's Rules of Orders, as we have not done a formal training in Robert's Rules of Order, and it is highly technical. And we don't want to, censor or, reduce the amount of dialogue that we can have as a community by being overly strict with Robert's Rules. So with that taken into consideration, is your question, what specifically is your question?
Well, first of all, we need to follow Robert's Rules of Order because it makes sure that everybody has an equal voice and an equal vote.
Mm-hmm.
And it provides some consistency in regards to being uniform. So if we haven't trained and that's an issue, that's another reason not to vote to include someone when we haven't gone through all our due diligence.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, it says here to be a vote of the other 9 members. It doesn't say a maximum or a minimum. It says the other 9 members.
That is correct. And that's why I'm asking for clarification from Hannah, which she is seeking out now.
So
Reverend
I
Grayson?
Yeah, historically, I guess not that we are following the growth fund model, the ex-officiaries did not have a vote. So new entity, so we would have to first establish, we want the, I hear you, I heard the 9, which is inclusive, but we need to establish going forward if their ex-officiaries are included or excluded in all votes, because we haven't, to my knowledge, we haven't established that as our rules.
So Reverend Grayson, in the guidelines, the ex officios are non-voting members. However, in this particular exhibit, it does say that this particular vacancy is to be filled by a majority of vote of the 9 members. So that would be the balance of everyone else. So that's why I'm asking for clarification from Hannah. Hannah, have you been able to come up with any clarification on that yet?
Yes, you're right, Marimba. So all 9 of the members listed on the screen now are permitted to vote on the vacancy. However, in order to be permitted to vote, the representatives would need to be present at the meeting, or we would need to conduct the vote offline.
Okay. All right.
So I move that we table this. There's too many gaps.
On the basis of what specifically, RB?
Basis of, number 1, we got a procedure that says that they're non-voting. Number 2, we got an exhibit that says they are voting. Number 3, conflict of interest for everybody that needs to be voting or whatever, however you want to characterize that. And everybody's not present.
So
Councilor Lavelle is not present. And the last thing is, why is there a rush?
well, this was on the agenda at last meeting, if you recall, and we asked that we push it to this upcoming meeting, meaning this meeting, so that we could move forward and fill the vacancy. So it's not a matter of rush, it's just us following up on what we said we were going to do from last meeting.
Right. And I agree with you that it was on the agenda for the last meeting, but we now have other things to consider that weren't present during the last meeting.
But to my understanding, we indicated that that was one of the order of business that we would try to fill that vacancy. So I'm open to us voting offline the 9 board members, but I don't want to put it off another month without being at the meeting, we can say we approved 3 organizations to fill that slot, and then offline we all vote, and then our next meeting we know who won or if there was a tie.
I don't agree with offline voting because the public needs to know who voted for who. I mean, this needs to be transparent.
Okay, in the interest of time, I'm going to encourage us to go ahead and vote. I see that co-chairman Lavelle has joined us, so that is no longer an issue specifically. The three nominations are August Wilson House, Ujima Collective, and Bethel AME. A point of clarification here, though, for another point of clarification, Hannah, are we asking board members to vote for one, or are we asking board members to vote for all that they would like to be considered?
I think either way is appropriate. I would suggest voting on one just for efficiency purposes, but either way I think is fine.
Okay. As such, all in favor of Ujima Collective, please indicate by aye or a show of hand.
Remember,
You should say something about the organizations.
I'm sorry, Kim.
Yeah, I mean, somebody should say, whoever whoever nominated them should say something about the organization and allow people to chime in before we vote. I mean, you have to have an informed vote.
Correct. Agreed.
Reverend Grayson.
my question was more of the order. Historically, it's the order of last, either first receive or last receive versus the middle name. So it's just procedurally, are we gonna, the last nomination was August Wilson House, then it was Ujima Collective, and then it was Bethel was first. So what order, I don't mind a paragraph on each, but I just want to get clarity on the parliamentary wise order of who should be called first.
No problem. We can do it in the order in which nominations were received, which would be Bethel AME, Ujima Collective, and if someone could go on mute, that'd be great, please. Bethel AME would be the first. The Ujima Collective would be second, and the August Wilson House would be third. With that said, I believe that RB nominated Bethel AME. RB, would you like to offer a short summary as to why you think that they should be the organization that fills Urban Innovation 21's space?
Yes, Bethel AME is the oldest institution, church on the Hill, and should be represented. The people that represent the people in terms of the elected officials and the pastors or reverends of the churches are the people that should be on this board to represent all interests. Because within the church, within that church is businessmen, businesswomen, children, adults, young adults, old adults from all walks of life. So they have a wide view of what the community wants and needs.
Thank you, RB. I'm gonna move over to Richard Witherspoon to explain his nomination of Ujima Collective.
Yeah, we're glad to. Ujima Collective is a small business here in the Hill District. Their product is novelty items and art items. The thing that's very attractive about Ujima Collective is that they have a community agenda. They help with helping people with life skills, and they have a sincere desire to help to develop the community and the people that they serve. I think that they would be an asset to this effort, and I believe that with their sincerity and their community agenda, they would bring significant resources and ability to the table.
Thank you, Richard. Kimberly, would you like to talk a little bit about the August Wilson House, your nomination?
Sure. The August Wilson House is an important institution in the Hill District community. They represent a large swath of people who are interested in learning about, reading about, understanding not only the life of August Wilson, but his legacy in the arts. The August Wilson House has supported many different individuals and institutions in the Hill District and in the city of Pittsburgh. Their board comes with a whole host of support, including legal, business, architectural support. They run a block party every year that is literally without even opening, that is very well attended. People come from the tri-state area. And Paul Ellis in particular is a signatory to the One Hill Community Benefits Agreement, which is an important part of this whole process. So it's interesting because the August Wilson House, interestingly enough, has kind of been left out of these conversations. So I wanted to add them back in.
Thank you, Kim. All right, let's move forward, please, on the actual vote. Obviously, I want to, just first acknowledge that all of the organizations that have been nominated are worthwhile, are worthwhile and very important community organizations and institutions. I think that we all can appreciate that and understand that. In this particular case, we need to move forward and fill one vacancy. And so I'd like to go ahead and open the floor for actual voting at this time. So we're first going to take it back in the same order. If you would like to advance Bethel AME to fill Urban Innovation 21's slot, please indicate by saying aye. And please also drop something in the chat here so that we're clear on that. All in favor?
Aye. Reverend Grayson.
Any others for Bethel? All in favor of the Zuma Collective, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye, Richard Witherspoon.
Aye, Marimba Malayans. All in favor of the August Wilson House, indicate by saying aye.
Aye, Kimberly Ellis, and I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, I'm now going to go through voting members to get your votes specifically. RB, who are you voting for? Perhaps RB had to step away. Councilman Lavelle.
Sorry, I was muted. This is RB Banks, and I'm voting for Bethel AME.
Thank you, RB. Councilman Lavelle.
I apologize. I just got let back into the meeting. I've been having.
I think he's having some connectivity issues. Councilman Lavelle, if you could put your vote in the chat, maybe that would make it easier. Alicia George. Alicia George. Salahuddin.
Probably, we're not putting a 300,000 DG boiler back in.
Councilman, you need to go on mute, please. Okay, we have the following members who are present but have not yet voted. Alicia George.
I'm sorry, this is Alicia George.
Hi, Alicia.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I'm sorry, I was having connectivity problems there.
That's
I
okay.
was voting for Ujima.
Okay, thank you. So I think that covers all of the voting members with the exception of Salah Udin and Councilman Daniel Lavelle.
Hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now, Salah.
Ujima Collective.
Okay. Thank you. Councilman, are you still having connectivity issues? Okay, we'll ask you to put your vote in the chat. With that, we have 2 votes for Bethel AME, 4 votes for the Ujima Collective, 1 vote for the August Wilson House. The Ujima Collective has been, will be appointed to fill the vacancy for Urban Innovation 21 based on those results. All right, let's move on to the next agenda item, please. There is one other item under old business that I'd like to get an update on from the URA staff. This is relative to the deposit that was made. As you all know, there was a commitment to capitalize the LRTA at $7.5 million upfront. However, that amount was capitalized at $7.187 million upfront, leaving a balance of approximately $313,000. At the last meeting, we did have a conversation about when the committee and the LRTA fund, specifically would get the rest of that funding from the developer, specifically Buccini Polling Group, the Pittsburgh Penguins, and FMB. I wanted to know if there was an update from the URA on when the community would get that $313,000.
Yeah, this is Julia. We are actively pursuing that. We've created invoices and are in the process of getting them approved by our board to submit for that additional funding. So we are actively working on it.
Okay, and have the developers agreed to pay it once they receive the invoice?
Yes, so we have a commitment from Mr. Buccini saying that he will make up the difference.
And by what are the terms on that?
I believe that commitment was made via email to Councilman Lavelle. Councilman Lavelle, is that the way you remember it as well?
Yes, that was a commitment that Mr. Buccini made directly to me.
Right.
And as mentioned, we're currently working on the documents to provide to them.
Okay, and what are the terms of that? When will we get that funding? What's the commitment?
I don't have an exact date for you at this point.
Okay, was there an aspirational date? Like time period, is it expected to come, say, in the next 3 months?
I believe that the invoices on the URA's end will be ready to be submitted as early as tomorrow and as late as Monday. So I would hope that the developer will be able to act on those, upon receipt, I'd hope, but we've had no indication on a date from the developer.
Okay, what are the terms of the invoice? Meaning how long normally does the URA give for an invoice to be paid?
I believe we typically give 30 days. Julia, do you know if that's on the invoice? We can add that if it's not.
I'll make sure it's added.
Okay, so 30 days from today would be December 23rd. So I'm gonna, I would like, because I'd like to get just some structure around that balance. I know that 313 might not be a lot to some folks, but for, as you all know, the Hill District and the needs that we have more broadly, that capital really can be used for a broad range of community needs. So thank you all for following up on that. Thank you for invoicing it. I would like to get some documentation, as we said in the last meeting, requesting a promissory note from the development team, whether that's, the entire development team, BPG, the Pittsburgh Penguins, and and F&B, or if whether that's just BPG. I'm not quite sure how that's working on the actual business side, but some clear language from them in the form of a promissory note or acceptance of the invoice with the intent to pay upon receipt, meaning that they notify us upon receipt of receiving the invoice that they will be paying based on the terms of the invoice would be very helpful. I think it would go a long way to instilling confidence that that debt is going to be paid. Is there anything else that we need to cover under old business? I think we're ready to move into new business if not. Okay, let's move into new business. And coming out of the last meeting, there was considerable conversation around the application, the development of the application so that funds could begin to get dispersed to projects within the community. Exhibit C of the guidelines state that the advisory board shall create an application for varying eligible uses of the fund. All application forms must be reviewed and approved by URA staff as directed by the executive director or their designee. And I would like to also point out that that is only under the advisement of the actual committee here. And so, so it is the expectation that the URA will not be issuing any funding out of this particular pool of funding unless it is approved by this specific committee. Everyone should have received on November 18th a draft of the Greater Hill Development Neighborhood Reinvestment Fund application in your email. And I'd like to ask Julia to proceed a little bit on the overview of the application.
Hey, Marimba. Yep, and just as a reminder, the per the guidelines, anyone interested in seeking funds from the reinvestment fund needs to submit an application, and it must include a description of the applicant's proposed project, a statement of how the project furthers the purposes of the fund, a description of the timing and method of any disbursements, and any other items requested by the advisory board. And just some clarifications. We just sent you a draft. It's a working draft. It you know, and once it is finalized and approved by this board, it will be available online as a fillable PDF. And in the draft, we use the URA logo, which it will be replaced with a reinvestment fund logo if and when it becomes available. So that's just there as a placeholder. So this is the cover page. It just gives a brief history of the LERTA and the fund, and just some simple instructions on how to complete the application and where to send it. Next slide. So this is just section 1. It's application information, just so we know a little bit about the applicant. Some basic info. Next slide, please. And this is more specific to the project. So location and the requested amount and the total project cost. It's included on this section. Next slide, please. And this is all per the guidelines. So this is what category the project falls under, and people have the ability to apply, check all that apply. And again, these are directly from the guidelines. All right. And so again, from the guidelines, it's a brief summary of the projects, a bulleted list of all activities that will make up the project scope. If it's a new project, if it's an existing project, to expansion, or if it's to fund an existing project to continue to fund. And state how this project furthers the purpose of the reinvestment fund and what outcomes and impacts does the applicant anticipate from this project, and what are the metrics to measure those outcomes, and a description of proposed timing and method of any disbursements. Next slide, please. And this is a table where they'll be able to enter the sources and uses of the project funds into the table below, and then provide the current status for each funding source. And then for anyone who is doing a development project, do they have site control, and please provide evidence of that site control. This is an attachment checklist, so we're asking for 4 photos if they're seeking funds for physical improvements, project renderings if available, and photos of the project site. The most recent financial audit, their current budget annually, if they're a non-for-profit, a map showing the project location, documentation of site control, itemized budget, and evidence of secured matching funds. And section 5 is certificate, any certificates, such if they're a MWBE or anything else that we would like to see for their project. So it's just a very basic overview of what the application looks like. And again, you were sent it last week, we can send it out again. Next slide. These were some questions we wanted the board to consider, or that we thought of when we were putting the draft together. Again, we've emailed these out with the application. We can send these out again if you guys want time to digest them and really consider. But that's the brief overview, so I'll hand it back to you, Marimba.
Thank you, Julia. I would like you to go back to the slide that breaks down the categories. I think it's really important, particularly for, community members to understand what is included here. Workforce development initiatives, job placement programs, MWBE business development programs, MWBE business counseling programs, children and youth education initiatives, mortgage assistance subsidies, rent assistance subsidies, development investments, other wealth building initiatives, project development within the Greater Hill District, and funding for Hill District institutional preservation. So as you can see from that list, and as we all know as members of the committee, the fund is intended to address a broad swath of neighborhood needs. And so I think that's just something we want to make sure we keep in front of people. Thank you, Julia.
Question.
Yeah.
Yes.
My question is whether or not we have identified our own priorities and what we see as the purpose of this fund, and whether or not we anticipate disbursements to be grants or loans. And if they are loans, what infrastructure do we have for collecting repayment of loans? If that conversation has been had and I missed it, I'm okay with that. I can get filled in later, but I don't know what our general intention of the fund is. What do we want to do with this fund? What are the priorities? Those are my questions.
It's a great question, Sala. There was some work done previously on priorities through a work group. Felicity, you may want to speak to that in greater detail. However, I think as a committee, it would be worthwhile us revisiting what those priorities, how those priorities were organized in terms of the percentage of fund that we wanted to spend on given areas. And then also, whether or not we wanted to entertain loans. And I think that is a question we need to probably have in considerable detail alongside the URA and or any other body that would have the capacity to administer and manage loans. Felicity, did you want to make any comments about the process before relative to prioritizing, or we can take that offline? Your call.
Well, I just wanted to mention that the priorities were originally identified in the CSIP. So that is what you are seeing before you here for this funding. And then we did convene a working group. I need to pull the exact dates because it's been about probably 2 years now, but met several times. A group of up to 50 people, I believe, were invited to participate in, some of whom are on this call today, participating in continuing that conversation that was rooted in the community collaboration and implementation plan. So that's where this is rooted.
So I will ask Solid, thank you, Felicity. I will ask Solid to your point that we add that to the top of the next agenda. I agree that it is critical to do that prior to the formal release of an application. I know there's been a lot of eagerness to get the application released. And I think that for good reason. I do think, however, we need to be 100% clear as a committee prior to that release on exactly how we're going to be expending funds and to guide our decisions. Reverend Grayson.
Yeah, just getting it right the first time is really important. So not that I don't want it to happen quickly or I don't want to rush it, but I make sure we try to get it right, that it gets into the hands of the community and of opportunity. I wasn't sure if I heard a cap on any of them on this particular opportunity. And so I don't know if that's part of it or as per request, I guess some level of just some guidelines would be helpful if in this whole piece, that's all.
With that being said, I totally agree with you, Reverend Grayson. If you could go to the last page of this presentation, I think there's a really important listing there. I think these questions here will get us to that end. I think that it would be really important if we can define the criteria for the grants / loans, whatever it may be. And I would like to suggest that there be a subcommittee of this body that would address these questions and bring it back to the full body to hash them out, to determine what needs to be done to make sure that we're consistent and to make sure that we're meeting the requirements of the fund. These questions are really pertinent here. I would be willing to chair such a subcommittee with a couple others from this body to hash these out and bring our suggestions back to the full body.
So I just want to suggest that we don't do a subcommittee. Like, it's very important for us to be transparent and open here, and we need to answer these questions. We need to prioritize the list. We need to clarify the list. There's been a considerable amount of time and changes in between that Lower Hill working group. And there's just a whole host of things. And this is why my suggestion at the last meeting was to revise the guidelines. I want to stand by that suggestion. The guidelines need to be revised for exactly this purpose. So if we need to have another working meeting to do that, that's fine.
Yeah, the problem that I foresee with trying to hash out this kind of detail with the full body is that we could very easily get bogged down on certain points. I mean, what I'm saying, like, for example, what selection criteria are we using? And if a subcommittee comes up with an idea and brings it back, and then that input from the full body would expedite the answers to these questions. That's all I'm saying. It's not about doing anything that's not transparent. It would be transparent because anything a subcommittee would come up with would have to be presented to the full body. But it would just be more expeditious to do it that way.
Yeah,
Madam Chair, I kind of agree, only because it took us an hour to get through the old business, and so there's so many details, and so I understand for transparency, Kim, in that sense I agree, but it would still come back to the committee. But we really have so many, because this one is so important that it works. I just think that a small subcommittee can hash out some things, work on some things. And again, it will be transparent when it's brought back to the body in an open meeting that's recorded, but it might save us an hour or two because we can't get to everything in one day. And that's too major. That's just my own opinion.
So the question I have is, why are we not valuing transparency because there were 2 meetings on October 25th where there's a lot of concern in the community about this very issue. So this should be debated so that the community can see where the board is actually proceeding. There is no rush, and then there's other things to consider. For instance, Census Tract 506, which is the Upper Hill, no longer qualifies for community development block grant money. Census Tract 305 will soon be in that same condition within the next 3 years, once F&B Tower is completed and occupied with the high-end renters or owners of the condos. So there's a lot of things to consider that need to be on the table and discussed by the full board in front of the community, so that the community can see the transparency and the thoughtfulness that has been taken. I agree with Kim that the guidelines need to be revised. I also agree with Kim that a lot has transpired since the last meeting a couple years ago. All those things I don't think a subcommittee can handle, and I think we need to do our due diligence, and to get things to move faster, we can do some homework. That's what we need to do.
That's right.
Well, I think those are two different issues. What we're considering at this point is the application itself. The guidelines and all those things, that's something else that more likely needs to be hashed out. But for the
No,
application, I think that, we have to be as specific as possible and really get into the weeds with it. You know what I mean?
Richard, the application is based on the guidelines.
Correct.
You heard Felicity say that the guidelines and everything else came out of the Lower Hill Working Group. And then there was a different entity. Then there was Marimba and Daniel working together. Then there's the CSIP. There's a whole lot that has happened. We need to be transparent. The guidelines need to be revised. We need to prioritize what we're granting to and what the selection criteria is. And this is the problem with rushing forward with the process when you don't have, proper transparency.
Okay, so with that said, I do want to clarify the record here. The Lower Hill Working Group was not who expressly worked on the guidelines. The CSIP, let me clarify because there's some misinformation or misunderstanding going on. So the areas of focus that are listed here come directly from the CSIP. They come directly from the CSIP. So that's been available to everyone since 2014. That has not changed. The guidelines only essentially reflect the CSIP expressly and explicitly. There's been no committee that's changed those areas. There's been no committee that has revised the CSIP of any sort. So I just want to make sure we're all clear on that. That being said, I think we are all in agreement that transparency is very important. And I think the question is, how do we meet the appropriate level of transparency and also the appropriate level of efficiency? So with that said, we have a lot of work to do. We can do it over as much time as we want. I know that there was a real charge from Co-Chair Lavelle to get this specific scope completed. And I think that is why everyone has been really pushing to get the application done. But if it is the pleasure of the committee to take its time to work through this in a recorded fashion, I have no concerns about either method, to be quite frank.
Are we using the hands up reaction? Are you able to see that, Marimba?
Sorry, I didn't see your hand. I'm sorry, Saul. I couldn't see everybody because of the screen share. Please.
But I just want to make sure that's the way we're
yes, and there, or you could just jump in, but yes. Please go.
Yeah, I think that the issue of transparency and full committee involvement outweighs the issue of efficiency right now. We're at a very important point. And I would suggest that we take the time necessary, a couple weeks, for each person on this committee to answer each of these categories from 1 to 13, and that we review all of the criteria committee that came out of the CSIP. And we should share our written responses. If we could send them to either Felicity or the URA, and then they can be distributed to the whole group. And then we study the answers that people submit, and we have a meeting that is whose agenda is to adopt the criteria that is reflected in those recommendations. But we need to take our time with this and study it deeply and answer these questions. I have a technical question. Number 5 asks, is there a cap on how much money an individual or organization can request? And my question about that is whether or not, maybe this should have to wait until we get the answers to all the others, but I was just wondering if we had made a decision as to whether or not individuals can apply for funds or organizations can apply for funds. And if individuals apply, is it a grant request or a loan request or some other kind of financial relationship that's being requested? Did we decide on that?
So I'll let Felicity jump in here, but some of those things have been discussed at a very high level, not a detailed level. Felicity, why don't you jump in and give a little bit of context?
If I may, before she does, item K in the URA list is not in the CSIP. And the other thing is, Dan.
I'm sorry, can you be specific on which one, RB, because we're not all on the same floor.
They need to bring it back up on the screen so everybody can see.
Okay.
Item K says funding for Hill District institutional preservation. That's not in the CSIP. The last item in the CSIP, no, it's not. The last item in the CSIP is project development within the Greater Hill District.
Got it. So, I think this one was about capacity building because that was a huge issue that came up during the work groups that were meeting. What's your next issue?
So are we following the CSIP? I think we should be. It's already a document, as you mentioned, September 2014. The other item to consider is that this fund has limited resources and the people that apply need to be applying as a last resort. Otherwise, we will expend the money and something will come along in the future that really needs our attention and it won't be there. Dan Lavelle actually mentioned that we need to have the ability for emergency use for individuals, and considering that the census tracts are changing, 506 has already changed and 305 is soon to change. The individual grant, loan, however you choose, whatever the circumstance, needs to be a strong consideration.
So the census tract from understood, thank you, RB, for pointing that out. To be specific, the funding for Hill District institutional preservation did come up in conversation, specifically around the churches. I know that was a big issue and point of concern because there are not a lot of sources of capital to support the churches of the neighborhood. A lot of the churches, I'm sure even more today than they were at that time, were struggling. And that was the point of sensitivity. So I just want to share that had come up separately, and that is the only item that was not in the CSIP coming out of the committee meetings that were had right before the guidelines were adopted. So with that said, noted, and appreciate that, that information. In terms of the census tracts, the Greater Hill District is the Greater Hill District, irrespective of what is happening in a given census tract. The boundaries of the neighborhood are not changing, even if the census tracts are changing to some degree. So just want to offer that as a point of clarification. Reverend Grayson, did you have a comment or question, or does anyone else?
So wait a minute. The census tracts mean that federal money, grant money, isn't available to those census tracts. So they're going to be more dependent upon this money than the others who have that money available. That's what that meant.
Understood.
Not that they're excluded.
Understood. Felicity, and then Reverend Grayson, if you had a comment.
I was just going to add that some of the points of concern that have been brought up here, a Hill District resident who is experienced in fund management and best practices did collaborate and give input on putting together some foundational like best practices and guidelines around percentages, right? Percentages of the fund that should be utilized, what percentages for loans, what percentages for grants, et cetera, to have a healthy fund. And fund management practices, to your point, Arby, as you mentioned, the resources are limited and we want to make sure that we are managing them with best practices. So I can circulate that information. I have some Excel spreadsheets and charts that I can circulate with you all as a foundation for some of the work that Sala has identified and the URA has identified, and others here of the questions you all want to answer.
The last thing I would add for the funding of the Hill District institutional preservation, if it's intended for the churches, I agree with that, then it should say that specific and not be so broad.
Thank you, Arby. Reverend Grayson.
He left. He may be coming back, but
no, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I concur that we should be more clear and be inclusive there. I guess my only question I heard Arby say is this grant is for the last resort, and is that the case versus to propel some entrepreneurship and a business opportunity as part of it, or so I just, even in that wording, I was a little not clear.
Yeah.
With the word
last. I think these are the questions that we have to really work through. So I am going to ask Felicity to share the information of the documentation of all of the conversations that were had prior to the formal adoption of the guidelines by the URA board, so that we can at least have a basis to start conversation. And then we are going to have to determine what we want our meeting schedule to be in order to work through these more specifics. Kimberly, did you want to add anything?
So just as everybody heard, Marimba outlined, nothing has changed since 2014. We know a lot more now than we did in 2014. We have a lot more now than we did in 2014. Case in point, when I look at workforce development initiatives, I mean, that's very broad. It could be a whole host of things. Job placement programs. We have the Hill CDC has its own workforce initiatives. So this doesn't necessarily need to be a total last effort for everything, but we definitely need to do an audit in terms of what we actually have in our community that can address these things, and then what the gaps are. Because even on this list, even though there's a mortgage assistance subsidy, there's nothing for housing stabilization or for homeowners who need to protect their homes, right? We only have roughly 2,500 homes in the Hill District. Homeowners are very, very concerned about rising property taxes. They're very concerned about being able to do renovations in their home so that they can upkeep their home. And that's not on here at all. Then we have
could technically go under wealth building, just FYI.
Yeah, no. So like Arby said, we need to be far more specific. That's not okay to go under wealth building initiatives. No. So this is why we need to change these things. And then also with children and youth education initiatives, it could be children and youth initiatives in general. It doesn't have to be education. So case in point, the skate park party that happened in Shop and Save, it was a beautiful thing. Perhaps they, needed some other funding or whatever, but I don't think that it should be limited to education, and the children and the youth are often left off of these types of programming and things like that. And so again, this is a reminder. I brought it up last time. I'm bringing it up again. This is why the guidelines need to be revised. And this is why we need to update this list, and definitely why we need to do our homework and go through every last one of those questions.
Noted.
Dr. Ellis.
Go ahead, Felicity.
I just wanted to add a point of clarification. One of the reasons that you don't see the explicit detail here related to housing, and you probably are aware of this, is that there is a separate housing opportunity fund that Councilman Lavelle has been working on. He secured that as a commitment specific to the Hill District related to parking tax diversions on a separate Lower Hill parcel. So Block E has a parking tax diversion. 75% of the parking tax will go to the development team to fund their development project. 25% will go into a fund specific to Hill District housing initiatives. And so you may disagree with that, but that is just the reasoning behind why you don't see the additional detail here related to home ownership assistance. That additional fund is intended to cover all of those housing related items.
Yeah,
For that reason.
Hold on for 1 second.
Sorry.
Kimberly,
go ahead,
then,
Ms. Ellis.
hold on,
Ms. Ellis,
RB,
go
for
ahead.
1 second, RB, please. Kimberly, then RB.
Yeah, I am aware of that. I'm not sure that it will cover all of our housing concerns, and definitely within the time frame, that's needed. It depends upon, who needs a new roof, who needs a furnace or something like that. And so I just, I don't think that I have to make a motion on this because we're talking about all of these things, but I think that homeowner assistance needs to still be on this list. And if we need to make it, it depends upon when the housing stabilization funds are available, and how soon we can access that. But I think that the homeowner issue is very, very important, and so I have no problem with it being listed twice, on the housing stabilization fund and in this list.
Thank you, Kimberly. RB.
Okay, so I agree with Kimberly, and and I also agree with part of what Felicity said. Because there's so much detail, we need to be able to go through it, and everybody needs to be able to be comfortable. We need a matrix to see it, and the information needs to go to the group at one time, not piecemeal, so that everybody gets the information at the same time and we can all collaborate. It's going to take some time, but there's so much, and Reverend Grayson is correct. We need to get it right the first time, and Kimberly is also correct that transparency, and Reverend Gracie echoed that, and I did too. Transparency is paramount.
Excellent, we agree there. Alrighty, with that said, I do want to be mindful of time. It is 1:30, and it is very clear that our next steps are going to be to have a meeting of this body to begin to work through our priorities, our timeline, our application, and a broad range of other items. With that said, I'm going to suggest that our next meeting be focused on that expressly and specifically, and that work be done in between this meeting and that meeting to come up with an agenda that can work us through all of the items that have to be covered. In fact, it's my sense that the next 3 meetings will probably have to be used for that, given the level of detail that everyone wants to delve into, and the fact that it seems that the majority are not in favor of breaking it down to a subcommittee, unless I've read that wrong.
When is the next meeting?
It's going to be the week of, is it January 14th? I mean, December 14th. Thursday, we're looking at the week of December, give me 1 second. The week of December 14th, and specifically, we are tentatively holding Thursday at 2 o'clock. And I don't know that exact date offhand.
Felicity, how soon will you be able to get this information out to everybody?
I probably by early next week. I mean, I'm looking at the fact that today's Tuesday and this is a holiday week, so we're out of the office Thursday and Friday. I'm probably not going to get it out to you tomorrow. So I would say beginning of next week.
Good. Okay.
And then what will have to happen from there is that the URA staff will, Councilman Lavelle and I will likely have to meet with the URA staff and think through a process. If anybody is interested in helping to think through how we organize ourselves to get through all of this at the actual committee level versus subcommittee level, you know, feel free to let us know. But there's a lot that has to happen. Okay. Is there any other business?
Yeah, sorry. This one more thing is that I think that we should consult a fund manager now. And you know, I'm thinking about Rob Wilson just because he came to mind, but I'm open to whoever it is. But I think having a present consultation with a fund manager is very important, especially if we're trying to, you know, maximize the use of the fund, take advantage, you know, should we be, there's a whole host of things, but having a fund manager to help guide us would be helpful in addition to Felicity's documents from the previous years.
Noted, and that actually did come up in the prior committee meetings as well. So I think in alignment with what the other input was from the prior work that was done. With that said, I'd like to move on to other business. Are there any items that committee members would like to add that are relevant to what we have covered today or relevant to the fund? And after that, we will move to close the meeting.
I motion we adjourn.
So moved. 1:34, meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good, happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving. Take care,
Everybody
everybody.
stay safe.
Have a
please.
blessed
safe.
Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thanksgiving.
Good holiday.
Thanksgiving.
Stay safe.